Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for this wonderful and informative session. The session will be recorded and slides and a link will be sent to everybody who's registered. And it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Alex Mihailidis. I hope I got that right, Alex, to you today. He's the Associate Vice President for International Partnerships at the University of Toronto and the Scientific Director of the AgeWell Network of Centers for Excellence, focusing on the development of new technologies and services for older adults. This is a field he's been conducting research in for over 24 years, although he looks too young for that. You'll find that his work in hundreds of journal and conference papers and abstracts. In addition to his active work in the rehabilitation engineering profession, he was named a Fellow of the Rehabilitation Engineering and Assistive Technology Society of North America on one of the highest honors in his field. He was also named a Fellow in the Canadian Academy of Health Science in 2021 for his contributions to the health and well-being of older Canadians. In 2022, Dr. Mihailidis was recognized by the United Nations as one of the Healthy Aging 50/50 leaders working to transform the world into a better place to grow older. As you can see now why Seniors for Social Action Ontario is honored to have him join us today. Please welcome him, and over to you, Alex.
Oh, thank you so much for that very nice introduction, Trish, and thank you so much for having me here. And it's great to see so many on the call and to recognize some names and faces that I've worked with in the past. So welcome all. Harry, if you can bring up the slides, please. Fantastic. I'm hoping everyone can see the slides okay. Um, so as Trish mentioned, my area of work has been in the area of technology to support older adults and their caregivers to remain in their own homes and communities for as long as possible. And I've been doing work anywhere from the role of smart home systems, using different sensors to collect information about people, looking at things such as artificial intelligence and how we can use artificial intelligence to detect changes in people's health and to predict changes in people's health, and kind of everything in between. Now, a big part of the work as well that I've been doing has been around also practice and policy of these technologies. And the way I like to describe it is, I can build you a really cool robot or a really cool smart home, but if I don't understand how that robot or device will be delivered into your homes and communities for you to benefit from, and if I don't understand the healthcare practices or the regulatory bodies from our government in terms of how that may impact the technology, then that robot or piece of technology would just sit in our research labs and collect dust. And trust me, if you ever come visit my lab, you'll kind of see a bit of a museum part of it where we just have things that just didn't go anywhere. And that's because we didn't really take a look at that holistic piece. And so that's why in my recent years, my work and my focus has really changed a bit to really leaving the technology development to my graduate students and trainees who are a lot smarter than I am these days, and me really just kind of plowing the road for them in order for their innovations to get out there. And that's why I love, partnering with organizations like this one here that, really has that influence over practice and policy in your communities and in our province and across our country. And Trish was sharing some stories with me of some things that, this group has done and really have influenced some of our decision makers in
I
Ottawa or
cannot
here.
hear.
Are you having trouble hearing someone?
Okay, can everybody mute, please? I think we're getting some sound that we shouldn't. Go ahead,
Okay.
Alex.
Yep. And so again, partnering with organizations like yourselves and individuals like yourself is really, really important to the work that we do. And so what I want to do in this presentation is not spend a lot of time on the numbers and the theory. We all know that. We all know that our country's getting older. We're all getting older. which is fantastic. And instead, I just want to show you examples of technologies that we've been developing and technologies that are really close to being on the marketplace. And so many of the things I'm going to show you are actually startup companies and technologies that my students have been working on and building with my support here in our lab here at University of Toronto. So with that, Harry, next slide, please. So I always like to start with the conclusion. I know myself, I tend to nod off a little sometimes and lose my attention during presentation. So if there's one slide you're going to remember, this is the one right here. And as one of my team members here calls it, they call it the bottom line up front of the bluff, which I've adopted in these presentations. And really there's four key takeaway messages. So first of all, when I talk about rehabilitation, I'm talking about not just the traditional sense of rehab. I'm talking about right from prevention of something from happening to all of us to, helping us when something happens. So whether it's preventing a fall or providing assistance post-fall, whether it's helping to slow down cognitive deterioration due to dementia or another cause, but then providing support if we develop a cognitive impairment as well. So the key thing here is this whole process of rehabilitation must be personalized, must be proactive, and in order to gain this personalization, most likely has to be tech enabled in some way. Now, this doesn't mean that we're using technology as kind of the only intervention, but it is one piece of any intervention or support that we're talking about. Now, as I just mentioned, the other key point here is rehab must include prevention. It can't just be about detecting something's happened and then doing something for the person afterwards. We need to try to prevent things. And again, this is where artificial intelligence comes into play to help us predict changes in all of us before they happen. As I was alluding to in my first point, AgeTech, as we call it, so technology for older people and caregivers, must complement, not replace human care. And again, by no means are we ever saying here that technology is going to replace everyone and you won't have any kind of social interaction or there'll be no human at the end of that phone call or Zoom call, et cetera. But again, as caregivers, we're all very busy in some capacity. I'm a caregiver to my parents in their early 90s. I also have young children at home, plus my job, et cetera. So as much as I want to be their caregiver as full-time as possible, I can't be. And this is where technology helps me out. It complements what I can and can't do and fills in the gap. So much in a way, technology is really a tool for me as the family caregiver in this situation. Whereas, for older people who may not have a caregiver available or family members close by, it's providing the tools for them to take care of themselves. And finally, and really this is where I think the voice of this type of group comes into play, is a systems level shift is needed to scale innovation. As I mentioned before the slides came up, we can build the best technologies, but if the practice and the policies and the service delivery models are not in place, then they're not going anywhere. And these technologies won't get out there to help people. And unfortunately, here in Ontario, and even at the federal level, there are just not a lot of policies already in place by our government officials that help to make this easier. And again, this is where a lot of work is still required. As I say to my students, the technology is the easy piece. It's this policy and practice piece, which is really tough. And it's very much like pushing a large boulder uphill. Next slide, please. So just in the sense of completeness, to give a little bit of background. So, we want rehab to go well beyond just the typical recovery, as I mentioned before. And again, as our aging population faces increasing risks of injury, disease, and social isolation, we really need to look at how we can use the tools within our rehab sector here. And again, whether that is the role of technology, whether that is the roles of occupational therapists, physical therapists, our family doctors, our family caregivers, they really need to be included in all ways to help with this prevention and the support as we all age in our homes and communities. And the key thing here is maintenance of function and enabling of independence. And really, at the core of everything we do, whether it's taking care of ourselves, doing our self-care activities, cooking a meal, etc., um, you know, function and independence are kind of at the root of both of them. And this is what we really aim with respect to the role of technology across this entire continuum. Next slide, please. So what I want to do now is, as promised, is really just show you some technologies. And hopefully, as I talk about these technologies, you'll kind of see where they fit into the little bit of the background that I spoke about and some of the things we're trying to do. So the first project is all about falls and safety. And there's been a lot of work that's been completed in this field around the world around fall detection systems, things like that. But as I mentioned, we want to prevent things before they happen. And, using things like sensors and artificial intelligence to detect whether it's falls or abnormal types of activities, that may be changes in the way a person walks or some unusual behaviors as they're going about their activities daily living. The holy grail in this whole thing is really about predicting these things that before they happen. So can we develop technologies that can essentially say, hey, you know what? I think, your mom is at an increased risk of falls here. So let's put some kind of intervention in place as soon as we can. So this first project is done by a couple of students that I've been helping supervise in the development of their startup company. And as we go through the slides, you'll see their story, which is just amazing. And some of you may have actually heard of the individuals in the company I'll talk about and seen them on the news in recent months. So next slide, please. So this is a company called Synopsys, and what it's made up of is essentially three different pieces. So first of all, there's the detection and the data collection piece. So using a simple waist-worn clip-on sensor, and they're also working on a version that can be sewn into people's clothing materials. It can collect various types of data about your movements and your movement patterns and your habits. The analysis piece basically takes all that data and is an all-in-one health data insight tool. So it can provide, again, that predictive analysis on whether a person's at risk of falling, but can also help to visualize information about what a person is doing in their day. So, are they going about their self-care activities in an appropriate manner and during the times of day when typically they should be? Are they taking their medications as they should be as well? Or are they missing different things where perhaps that may indicate a change in their health or their capabilities and therefore some type of intervention? The third piece of this is an in-room voice assistant that they call Glenn. Not sure where they came up with the name Glenn. They just call it Glenn. But think about almost like, and I always hate referring to these products in a presentation because sure enough, it sets them off in people's homes. But think about almost an Amazon Alexa or a Google Home. I apologize if anyone's devices have gone off. But basically an automated system that can provide you information and that you can talk to understand better in terms of what the technology is seeing about you, to be connected to your loved ones or your social circles, or just to gain general information. And so the combination of these three things really has put together this overall kind of one platform or this operating system for seniors' health in retirement in nursing homes or the person's home as well. Next slide, please. So this technology and this startup founded by Risha and Ian is really an incredible story. These two individuals came to me just right out of high school, and they wanted to build this technology. And the first thing that they asked me about was about older adults, et cetera, and my experience in my own research and working with older people. And I told them a story that was a message that was given to me in a very similar talk like this many, many years ago. And that was an individual, raised their hand after my presentation and said, Alex, if there's one message that you need to take away and get across to everyone in this field is that when you've seen one senior, you've seen one senior, right? You know, and this is really true, especially in the face of some kind of mobility or cognitive or sensory impairment, that the older adult population is very, very heterogeneous. And so a one fit all solution is just not going to work with this demographic and this customer base as it would perhaps with, another type of product that's out there. And they really took this to heart. They took this to heart so much that they actually moved themselves in to a nursing home in Scarborough. And they lived there and they still live there. They had all their meals there. They slept there. They participated in activities with the seniors. They helped the caregiving staff. They spent Christmas and the holidays there. And from this, they were able to collect so much valuable information in terms of what their technologies should and shouldn't be doing because they basically lived with their customers and they listened to them and they had older adults living in this facility participate and the professional care staff participate in the design, the development of the technology as well. And so this is one of those stories, and this is rare. I have students, and I'll send my students to volunteer in care homes and with home care agencies to learn this. But they really want to step above it. And because that, they've come up with a really, really great product so far. And I'll talk a little bit more about that right now. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, what they found out is they need a holistic solution. It can't just be just a fall detection system or just a sensor or just data analysis. They really need to put the whole package together. And so the three components I described before, Glenn and the sensor and the analysis are all described here. I won't go in detail about this, but again, they had the in-room voice assistants, which provided, help to the individual. It helped to, detect falls at night, for example, just listening to sounds in the room. So it could hear if a person perhaps got out of their bed or if there was a loud thud on the ground, etc. But again, also connecting them with information. As I mentioned, they had the sensor, which was just a clip-on sensor, so it's nice and easy to use. It had a battery life of about a month and a half, and they're really working hard to get that up to a year or more, so you don't have to worry about charging the device. It had your typical push button, help button on there that many of us are used to seeing, but again, then it had automatic sensing in there as well. And this was all integrated into the care home's already existing systems. And they found out that that was really critical as well, is making sure that the technology that they developed worked with the technologies and the systems and the medical records, et cetera, that the home was using as well. And that's really where the analysis came into play. So not only could the older adults or caregivers see what's happening with the older person, but the care staff was also able to directly integrate it into their electronic health record system as well. And also help then the staff and the facilities to complete their audit reports that are required as well. And so again, this not only met the needs of older people in terms of helping them feel safer and more independent, but then also helped the business needs of the homes or the care providers as well. And that was a really important lesson, not only in this project, but in all the projects we do, that, it's just not about, the healthcare side of things. Obviously that's priority number one, but we need to take into account a whole bunch of other factors as well. Harry, next slide, please. So this is a second project and a new startup that was developed by one of my master's students called Remindful. And again, this is all focused on independent living. Now, you'll notice the background of this slide is a bunch of Post-it notes. And this is where this project was inspired from, because, we probably all know this, and I know it very well because I do it in my parents' home, that if I want to remind them about something, I basically put up Post-it notes with handwritten messages throughout their home, in the bathroom, by their medication, next to the bed, et cetera. And this is kind of common practice, even still to this day with particularly with older adults with cognitive impairment, to help them remind things. And so when this student started with me and she was asking, well, what kind of projects do you have going on? I described all of the current things, but I could tell she wasn't very interested in what we were doing. So at that point, I said, "Well, for years I've always had this project in my head, and it's the digital post-it note." And she's like, "What does that mean?" I say, "Well, again, you go in a person's home with cognitive impairment. There's these post-it notes everywhere. Well, what if we were able to replicate these post-it notes with very simple, cheap interfaces, digital devices that you could easily stick up in someone's home, that a caregiver then can very easily send messages to, through an app on their phone or on their tablet or whatever it may be." And not only would these little tiny electronic post-it notes deliver these messages, but it'd also be able to know if the person has read the message, if they completed the activity, and then again, collect information, as needed to understand the patterns of living with that particular person. So this is what Remindful was. And so she developed a couple of versions of the system and has collected some data, and now is being established as a startup and just accepted into one of the startup programs here at University of Toronto to move it forward. And again, it uses a lot of the same techniques I've mentioned to date already. So things like artificial intelligence, it's personalizable and customizable for the caregivers and the people living with dementia. It verifies that tasks were done. It can collect data to try to see abnormal behavior or to predict abnormal behavior. It's non-intrusive, nothing worn on the person. You don't need to interact with technologies in any kind of physical way. And a big part of the development of this was, again, collecting information from the primary customer of these technologies that were the family caregivers. So a lot of work went into including family caregivers as part of the design team to actually design the system for us and what they want it to look like and the types of features it should have. Next slide, please. So in terms of the system setup, essentially these red boxes represent what these digital post-it notes may look like, and you'll see kind of an early prototype next. And so essentially you'd set up these post-it notes throughout the home wherever you need it. So the reminders are very location specific, but because they're electronic, you can move them around as needed or add more as needed. As I mentioned, it very much was co-designed and very much was based on previous research and current research being done in this area as well. So it was very much evidence-based, both from a research perspective and a very practical perspective, and that is the opinions of the caregivers and the older people. Next slide, please. So this is kind of an example of what it looks like. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you see an example of what the digital post-it note would look like. And these can vary in sizes depending perhaps on visual impairments that the person may have. And here's an example where it's basically reminding the person to take the dog for a walk. So this may be posted, next to the doorway. At 4 p.m., this reminder would go off. There may be an audio reminder. That could just be kind of a simple bing or a sound that we're used to, but it could also be the caregiver's voice saying, "Hey, Dad, don't forget to take the dog for a walk now." Now, this would appear. The individual will go, and if they look at it, the system would detect that to indicate the person has looked at the message. Now, we don't know 100% if they've read it. We know that they've looked at it, but then using other sensors, we would determine, okay, have they now opened the door? Have they taken the dog outside, etc. On the left-hand side here, you see the application on the phone. So this may be on the phone for the caregivers and the family members, where you can add reminders. You can configure the locations of these digital post-it notes. You can have a calendar. But perhaps, and what's proven to be one of the more important features, is you can actually then connect and coordinate with other caregivers. So I know in my case, I coordinate caregiving with my two sisters. Sometimes it's a nightmare. As you can imagine, getting people, okay, who's going to do what? Who's already told mom to take their medication? Oh, hold on a second. I told her an hour ago, take her medication. And I will not share my dirty laundry with family caregiving issues here. But again, probably stories we're all used to hearing. So again, it also provides that coordination piece across the caregivers as well, so that you all know what pieces of caring you're providing, what reminders are being provided as well. Next slide, please. So again, this is just the confirmation. So if it detects that I'm looking at it, it may give me a window that says, do I have Sam's leash? Yes or no. That may be a verbal prompt that allows me to verbally respond. Again, it's adaptable to the person and to their capabilities. As a caregiver, I then may get sent a message that they've missed the reminder. Perhaps if it went off and no one has looked at it, there may be some kind of concerning response to that, and perhaps we see a pattern of activities that doesn't correspond to what the reminder is. And I'll also get notified if there's a gradual decrease in interaction. So perhaps, we install the system, the person's doing really well. They may have just mild cognitive impairment at this point. I'm interacting with the system. The reminders are all being interacted with and all being followed. But then over time, I'm slowly starting to see a decrease in the interaction between my mom and the device. That may indicate, again, a change in your cognition, a change in your physical capability, sensory. So again, not something that's trying to diagnose her with something, but something that's just trying to raise an alert to me as the caregiver, and also to my parents that, hey, there may be something going on here. Let's check it out. Let's go see the family doctor. Let's take a look at your medications, etc. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there are various use cases. So again, reducing caregiver burden to remind and monitor. There's that caregiver coordination piece I mentioned before. And I said that this is proven to be one of the more useful features. And that's because, when a person has declined far enough in their cognition, as we all know, there may be no piece of technology that can help them. It's going to rely on that human support. And so that caregiver coordination piece and feature of the technology lasts way beyond the digital post-it note part of it. And so it's not a time limited piece of technology, which always seems to cause a lot of negativity in this field that, hey, I spent a lot of money on this technology and my mom was only able to use it for a month and now what am I going to do with it kind of thing. And so we want to make sure that this had a life cycle well beyond just that reminding piece. And then the final one, again, is that decision support for clinicians because it can provide written activity records. And this also includes, again, that prevention piece. So the pre-rehabilitation, the rehabilitation part, again, right to the point where perhaps, unfortunately, they may have to leave their homes. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next project I want to talk about is around understanding who would actually benefit from these types of technology. And again, that's always an issue we run into from a practice and a policy and a service delivery aspect is we're designing so many different technologies out there and the marketplace is starting to get flooded with them and various smart home systems. And you're seeing people talk about the role of technology for older people, but not everyone is going to benefit from them. And so how do we determine if someone will actually make use of the technology? And furthermore, will they benefit in a positive way from the technology? And whether that's a medication reminding device or the technologies I've shown you here. And so what we want to do is we want to take artificial intelligence and some of the work we've been doing on predictive approaches in the previous systems and apply it in a way that we can have a more inclusive, innovative approach here now, because we can use the predictive approaches using artificial intelligence to really try to understand, again, the benefits of that technology, who should be included in the use of that technology, whether it's in the testing phase or the implementation. And hopefully this really then helps to position older adults and caregivers more as the co-leaders in the whole innovation process as well. If we understand better the factors and the features that, basically we would need to take into account to design the most effective solution as possible. Next slide, please. So this is a project, as I mentioned, that uses these predictive models to identify who would benefit the most from a particular solution. But it also had several sub-objectives as well that we're hoping will be useful in the development of other technologies. So that is, first of all, we built a very robust data set. And you'll see in a moment what's in that data set. But essentially, it's information about an older adult's level of comfort with technology, the amount of support they have from families and caregivers, and other factors that can be used in the prediction of the usefulness of technology, but hopefully in the future, also in the development of better technologies. We also want to be playing around with different types of artificial intelligence models to see which one would be the best ones moving forward. Again, not just for this project, but for future technologies. And then obviously we want to use all this information that we're collecting about the person and the usefulness of the technology to support clinical and caregiver decision making. Because if we're seeing that a technology or intervention we put in place is no longer effective based on this type of information and predictive modeling, then at that point, a different type of intervention may have to come into play. Next slide, please. So, if everyone can just mute their lines, please. And some background noise on my headphones here. So what we did is we built a data set. At this point, it was a synthetic data set. So it was all fictional data that we collected based on real life use scenarios. That was really meant to replicate the real world distribution. And again, this is based on research that we've done in the past and other people's research as well from the field of gerontology, digital health, et cetera. And we also then used well-known tools that are out there in the literature and the research that have been proven to help identify older adults' levels of comfort with technology, caregivers' use of technology, et cetera, such as the unified theory of acceptance and use of technology, which is one of the more well-known tools out there. So using these models, we then developed a very short survey that the older adult can complete on their own or a caregiver can complete as a proxy that essentially collected information across 14 different features about the person. And that was across demographics, health and cognition, social supports, and tech readiness. So again, level of comfort with technology. Next slide, please. And we took this data set that we collected and the results of the survey that we collected across in our data set, we put about 500 older people into it. And we developed then what you see here on the left-hand side, this very simple user interface that took the information from the predictive model and then kind of spit out this risk level. And what you see here for this particular person is based on the user profile that the person has entered about themselves, or that as a caregiver, I've entered about my mom. It then basically predicted that there's a low risk level in terms of using a particular piece of technology with this individual. So again, that this person would most likely benefit from technology. And the system then also gives me the top 3 factors on why it thinks the person would benefit from technology. And in this case, it's because there's high caregiver support. So as a caregiver, I said, yes, I'd be willing to support my mom using the technologies. I'll help maintain it, et cetera. This person had moderate digital literacy. Perhaps they've used a smartphone already. They use a tablet, they use the computer, et cetera. But most importantly, and the one that kind of came up, as you'll see in a second, is the older adult has a positive attitude towards the use of technology. So that's a question that we ask. And so instead of saying, well, no, I hate technology, it's not going to do anything for me, this particular person said, yeah, I use technology. I'm excited to use technology. I think it can make a difference in my life, perhaps. And based on those, it spit out this particular result. So you can almost imagine the opposite of this, that if there was no caregiver family that was nearby the person or willing to support, if I've never used a computer, and because I just have this overall fear of technology, then again, most likely the prediction here will be, well, this person may not benefit them that much from the technology. But again, this also is based on the type of technology that's being used as well. Next slide, please. So the final project I'm going to show you now is a project that I've been developing with a startup company actually in Spain. And this is all around this notion of synthetic memories. And many of you have probably heard of reminiscence therapy or art therapy that basically, has been shown to be very, very effective, particularly for older adults with cognitive impairment, by engaging them in the creative process. And in terms of art therapy or creative activities, again, there's a lot of examples and a lot of research that shows that if you get a person with dementia to start painting, that they'll have greater recall of past memories. There's these great videos online that you can see of a person with dementia who basically is locked in, is nonverbal, sits down at a piano, starts playing the piano beautifully, or starts singing a song beautifully as well. So reminiscence therapy is along the same lines. If you sit down with an older person with dementia and perhaps start showing them pictures or videos or playing them sounds of music or sounds from, whatever it may be, that they'll start to be able to recall these memories, and not just long-term memories from their childhood, but short-term memories as well. And this can have not just great benefit in terms of perhaps slowing down cognitive disability, but also in terms of reducing agitation, improving social connectedness, and overall happiness and quality of life of the people. Now, the problem is sometimes there are no pictures, there are no videos to show the person to help prompt them through this therapy. And so what myself and this company in Spain is looking at is, again, can we use artificial intelligence that through a very simple, or lack of a better word, interview process with the older person or with the family members and the caregivers, these images get automatically generated. And these images and these synthetically generated images or videos or sounds or music can then be used as part of the reminiscence therapy with these individuals. So instead of me talking about it, I just want to show a video of it. The one thing I want you to keep in mind is the majority of the imagery and videos you're going to see in this video are all synthetically generated based on just talking with the older adults and the caregivers and the family members themselves. So it's hard to tell which are kind of the real photos and the synthetic ones, but the majority are generated by the artificial intelligence. So Harry, if you can play it, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
One of the steps for dancing, and there was a sort of garden party or something, and I remember a great green meadow, and I was there dancing. Well, I never was very elegant in my movements, but I think I just remembered what to do.
Synthetic memory is the reconstruction of a personal story, of a memory, into an image or a video using generative AI. And this project works in the intersection between arts, technology, and community, with the aim to help people dignify and recover parts of the past that have been lost.
Essentially, synthetic memories was born at the intersection of two questions. The first one being, how can technology preserve memory? And the second one, how can AI serve the common good? And so one of the first things that we decided to do is bring those two universes together, seeing how AI can be a tool of mediation to represent and document all these undocumented memories.
The Citizen Office for Synthetic Memories was not expected to be experienced as a regular exhibition. More than a visitor, you're a participant, and we were building a prototype, a functioning prototype, for another kind of municipal service that the city of Barcelona is offering. Through the online interface, you can book 1 hour in which the team of the office will be helping you to recover a memory. First, you are welcome in the office, and then you sit down in a one-to-one interview with a prompter and an interviewer.
We always start with this simple question that is, what is your earliest memory? And from there we start to jump from one question to other, kind of driving the conversation into building up stories. We transform them using generative AI into a series of images and videos that then are exposed to the person, to the participant. And then you can see there is a kind of clear reaction to it. Sometimes it's like super fast and someone says, yeah, that was exactly like this. But sometimes it takes more time and they say, no, the wall on the end, it was not green, it was brown, or it was not during the day, it was during the night. And then you fine-tune the prompt until you get to an image that the participant can say, yes, that's how I remember it.
Interrogates the notion of what is a memory. We are trying to turn these memories into objects, and these objects are actually becoming artifacts for debate. Devices that we use to prompt what do we remember about our childhood, or about the place in which we were born, or about moments that had a big significance in our personal biography.
One of the research that we are doing now is exploring how synthetic memories can help in the space of reminiscent therapy enhance cognitive abilities from patients with dementia and Alzheimer.
So reminiscence therapy is a technique that's been used for many, many years with older adults with dementia and other cognitive impairments. And basically what it does is it encourages these individuals to tell their stories to people. And what the research has found is by telling their stories, they actually have quite positive impacts on their cognition and their memory, and also on things such as their mood and their emotions.
We firmly believe that culture and the arts are the laboratory of society. They are a space in which we can rehearse and imagine new forms of living, new forms of actually establishing different imaginaries with technology or with public health. What the office is doing is allowing citizens to find the place, the moment, and the context to have a different relationship with their personal memory.
We want to do so by creating collective dialogue, firstly about the past, so that we can unlock the potential to enrich both the present and the future. And what we aim is for synthetic memories to become a catalyst for creating a positive bias, especially towards underrepresented and vulnerable communities, ensuring technology is not a memory replacement, but really a tool for understanding.
Great. So hopefully that video gave you a good demonstration of what that project is, and it's still relatively brand new, but really, really exciting. And you can imagine all kinds of different applications for what we're doing there. So I'm going to finish off now with kind of the call to action. So as I mentioned, a lot of great work happening in this area, especially here in Ontario. But not a lot of support for it, particularly from a funding perspective and implementation from the government, et cetera. And so this is something that we want to change. And AgeWell as a network has been doing a lot of great work to do that. But to further the cause, we've also now established the AgeTech Futures Institute. Next slide, please, Harry. And what this is essentially, it's a global think tank. So it's a place where we can get together, work with our policymakers, work with the government, work with companies, and really come up with kind of bold new ideas about aging technology. And the interesting thing here is the whole goal of this really is to not think, pie in the sky, crazy ideas that are never going to happen, but again, to think big in the ways that we can shape policy and practice so that these things can get in the hands of the people that need them. Next slide, please. So again, here's just some key aspects about why we developed this think tank. Again, some of the key things here is innovation really is starting to outpace the policy at this point, and we need policy to catch up to everything that's being developed. Equity and ethics must lead in everything that we do here. And, obviously aging is a global priority as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of the core focus of this new institute, it's policy, education, partnership. We're not here to develop technologies, but to work with organizations like yourself to help shape these three areas of focus. Next slide, please, Harry. And there's already an inaugural group of fellows, and these are international leaders from around the world, and you may recognize some of the names. The really cool thing about this institute is these individuals are not part of this representing their institutions. So I'm not here as a fellow representing University of Toronto or AgeWell. We are all here as our own personal selves with a personal passion and belief in the role of technology and aging. And that allows us, therefore, not to be biased by the desires or goals of our institutions, but really just to be there to represent what we truly think and feel needs to happen in this area. And, collectively, if you add up all the years that this team has had, it's well over probably 200 years of experience in the area of technology and aging. So we're having our first meeting of fellows in the next couple of weeks. So a lot more will come out about some of the first initiatives and more importantly, how you could become involved. So next slide, please. So with that, again, we want everyone to be part of this change. We want this, to be a movement that values dignity, equity, and innovation, and really to help shape the global systems that we all work for and that we all work within, no matter what our age may be, no matter where we come from, whether we use technologies or not. It's something that's going to impact all of us in some way. Next slide, please. And with that, there's some contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me. Check out the LinkedIn page for the AgeTech Futures Institute. Check out the AgeWell website. If anyone happens to be in Montreal next week or would like to travel to Montreal, it's actually the annual National AgeWell Conference on the Wednesday and Thursday in Montreal. You can check that on the AgeWell website. There are special rates for seniors to attend and a lot of different activities that happen there. So again, that's just a plug for that event. But with that, I'm going to stop there. Thank you again for having me. And Harry, I think we can take down the slides and have some questions and discussion. So again, thanks very much, everyone.
Absolutely. I think we already have a question, but that's a wonderful presentation, Alex. And I can say that as somebody who has always been rather uncomfortable with technology. So it's great that the way you presented actually made me feel more comfortable. Now, just for interest's sake, and just to start off the discussion, and by the way, folks, you can go to where it says, I think it's chat, right? No, it's not chat. It is React. If you go to your React button, should have a little heart above it. There's a raise hand function when you click on it. If you raise your hands, I'll know that you have a question. Or you can just try and get my attention. We have a lot of people in the session, so I may miss some people. Okay, I see Druin, whoever Druin is, has their hand up. But before we go to the questions, what kinds of safeguards are there? I know that we know you, and we know your integrity is absolutely impeccable. And I know that a lot of this memory recovery work is being done with people who are trained in reminiscence therapy, so they will know to determine real from not real memories, that kind of thing. Yeah. But just in general, what kind of safeguards are there in place around? We always know that there will be some bad actors out there who will want to misuse technology. So yeah. How do you prevent that, Alex? Have you given that some thought?
Yeah, that's a great question, Trish, and I think ties nicely to Jennifer's comment in the chat as well about AI and the potential issues that could happen, and that's why AgeWell was set up by our federal government and continues to live on beyond the federal funding. That's why the AgeTech Futures Institute was set up and other similar organizations that we partner with, really in order to make sure, it isn't the wild, wild west out there, right? Yeah. And in order to work with these companies and work with key partners and with the government to understand, how do you separate the bad actors from the good, right? And that's really a big job we need to start doing more of now. And so, one of the first things that we want to do is a lot of more education around this, right? So how do you know how to pick the right fall detection system? How do you know what a good GPS tracking system may be, or et cetera? And so taking on that role of advocacy, education, safeguarding has really become a big role of our organization. So for example, one of the roles I took on a couple of years ago was working for the Canadian Standards Association and writing and developing the long-term care standards. And again, making sure that we had the right people on that committee that were going to develop standards that were going to really do what they're meant to do, and that is keep people safe in long-term care. Now, 0 provinces or territories have adopted them because the federal
Right.
government won't mandate it, even
Right.
though they asked us to write them. But they're out there now, right? And so again, we're doing other standards work with other international organizations as well around age tech specifically in terms of how, again, do you build age tech that is safe,
Yeah.
and that's going to be effective as well.
Yeah, and it's always going to come down to enforcement, of course, to make sure.
Exactly.
Which
And
is
yeah,
always the tricky part. What we found is the tricky part.
well, and especially when you have bodies out there that don't wish to enforce anything.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah,
So it will be buyer beware to a certain extent, but
exactly. Yeah,
hopefully, people like yourself and your students will be able to be resources for people as they
exactly.
to
Yeah,
adopt this kind of thing. So that would
yeah,
be great.
absolutely.
And by the way, just to Alex's point about um, we can play a role in all of this by talking to our MPs, and particularly, but also our MPPs here in Ontario, and we can share the link because everybody's going to get a copy, a link to this presentation. I would share the link with them directly and just say that you're interested in policies to support this kind of thing if that is your interest. So if you would do that, that would be great because we have quite a number of people in this presentation and more who will be watching it later. And if everybody does it, it could put quite an impetus behind the kinds of things Alex is trying to do. With that, Druin has raised his hand. Whoever Druin is, I'm sorry, I don't know your first name. Go ahead. You'll have to unmute.
Yes, it's me. I just wanted to know if there's anything in new housing for seniors that needs to be addressed in order for this technology to be facilitated.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, the amazing thing is it doesn't actually take a lot of infrastructure in people's homes for these technologies. The main thing it takes internet, so some kind of Wi-Fi internet connection. And amazingly, a high percentage of people's homes in Canada still do not have proper internet. It's not being seen as a basic human right as it should, connection to information. Um, you know, Beyond that, it doesn't take a lot to install these technologies. And one thing we've been trying really hard to is to work with builders and with organizations like the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, et cetera, to try to understand and again, build some basic rules or standards, whatever we want to call them, that all new builds should be going by at this point in order to make not just the ability to facilitate the use of technologies to support people, but also to have the built environment to be accessible and safe, right? And that benefits everyone. And you're seeing this happen around the world in other big countries, whether it's Singapore or other places around the world that are starting to mandate these things and really starting to build, specialized housing for seniors and people who can age in place as much as possible. But again, Canada is still not at that point.
It's on mute. Is there someone else who has their hand up? I'm just looking to see here. I'm not seeing anyone. Is there anyone else who has a question of Alex? Just go ahead and unmute and shout your question out.
I'm curious about the availability of some of these methods or strategies, particularly the remindful one. I have a friend who is same age as I am, 86, and her sons are constantly having to call her to see if she has eaten supper, what did she eat for supper, if she's okay, because she lives alone. And I thought this would be such a good tool because she makes tons of little post-it notes of things to ask them. She even has to write down where she's parked her car when she goes out for coffee and, and take it with her. So are they commercially available?
So they will be hopefully soon. So I said, these are all startups that are just starting to roll out. So hopefully in the next year or so that they will be products that will be available. But there are other devices and technologies that are currently available out there. And these are just some of your typical smart home devices that you can go buy at Best Buy or Home Depot. And, so one thing that we do, for example, with Best Buy, who's a key partner of AgeWell, is to advise them and the people who work in their stores in terms of, well, how do you put together pieces of technologies off the shelf that can then help to solve that kind of issue around monitoring, around eating, for example. And so that's something we're going to continue to do more and more also through AgeWell and through the AgeTech Futures Institute is again, start to focus a lot on what is currently available right now and whether it was built with this purpose in mind or not, it could be applied to it. And how do you go about doing that? So that's where that education piece really comes into play.
Yeah. And I've had my own experience I bought a new Apple Watch that would detect falls, but it has also told me that my walking is unsteady and I stand a good chance of falling within the next 12 months. It didn't do it with any decent bedside manner, but it's true. And it's really made me mindful that, okay, I better use my walking poles more regularly than I had been.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. It's good that it was helpful.
Yeah, yeah. And we also have the house set up. My son is pretty techie. So I have Alexa and I have Google and
You have
lots of things.
you have a bunch of technological devices keeping an eye on you.
Yeah, and they just make life easy.
Yeah, exactly. David Muck, I don't know your last name, but David, go ahead. You had a question. Is David there?
You have another David. It's David McCauley.
Yep, go ahead, David.
Okay, I had a
You're
question.
David
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to, I guess, suggest that every home almost has at least a smoke detector, CO2 detector, and certainly apartments and condos, multiple housing have a fire alarm system that's tied into not only a fire department, but monitoring systems and that type of thing. And I wonder if there's been any connection because these are already wired into the home and interconnected to the electronic devices. And I wonder if there's a possibility of sharing some of that, let's say, hardware or system with some of these systems, Alex. And by the way, I really enjoyed the presentation. I think it's very clear and shows a lot of promise for future technologies here.
Great. Thank you so much, David. And you're absolutely right. There's infrastructure that already exists in a lot of these buildings and homes that we could be piggybacking off of. And the smoke detectors is a great example. So, a few years ago, we were playing around with some fall detection systems, and essentially we built one unit that, had the fall detection system plus then the smoke detector, carbon monoxide, all built into it. And so essentially go into each room, replace your smoke detector with these one unit that would take into account everything. And so if we can start doing that more and more, that would be fantastic. Now, the one issue we face though is that a lot of these technologies are still built without talking to each other, right? And so someone builds a technology that uses a communication protocol X, and then someone builds another technology that uses communication protocol Y, and X and Y don't talk to each other, and it becomes a whole mess. So something around standardization and unification of the types of technologies that are being used as part of these smart home systems is really needed. And again, I'm sure some of you also face this. I have smart home systems in my parents' house and my house. I have 7 different apps I have to use on my phone to look at everything, right? And so again, how do we unify these things together? Oh,
exactly.
Trish.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Yes, I mean it is a problem, and I guess in some of the older homes it might be more of a problem, but
yeah,
hopefully
absolutely.
the newer builds will be considering that. David, and then I'm going to come back to, I have to ask your first name, Druin. What's your first name again? Is it Judy?
No, it's Maureen.
Maureen, okay. I'll come back to you in a moment. David, you first.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just curious. Back about, I guess, 8 or 9 years ago, I attended a conference, and there was a presentation by the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, which was based out of the Mars district. And I saw some really interesting and heard about some really interesting things there, but I've never seen them, actually hit the marketplace. Is the center still in business, and are they doing similar things or partnering with you as well?
Yeah, so they're mainly based out of Baycrest. They're one of Baycrest's hospital centers here in Toronto. And they're still very much alive and kicking. They're very similar to AgeWell, where instead of producing our own technologies, we fund and support the development of technologies and startups. And so so they're still going on, and we partner very closely with them to co-support and co-fund various projects, and companies are coming out as well.
I'll just give you an example of something that I saw, back in 2017. It was a little sensor that went on that you could connect, I guess, the coffee machine to. And so when someone's parent living by themselves, got up in the morning, they made their coffee, and then, their caregiver or family member got a signal that, yes, they were up in the morning and making their coffee. And if you didn't get that signal, then, maybe we need to check on mom, to see what's going on. So, so that might be something that might, I don't know, Trish, if you're familiar with them or not, but might be interesting to have them speak to the group, your group as well.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities. That's why we wanted Alex, because he had such a good overview of everything that has been developed over the last while. So we'll certainly give that some thought.
Yeah, I just put the link to Cabby in the chat there.
Oh, there you go. So you'll be able to contact them yourself. Yep, I see it there. Maureen, you had another question, and then Joyce.
Yes, I was wondering, is there a listing of what's somewhere of what is available right now? That's my first question. And the other one is whether or not, like for the synthetic memories, or I don't remember exactly the title of it, but anyway, is there a guide that could help caregivers do this type of reminiscing with their parents or whoever they're looking after at the moment, or not, or does it take specialists?
Yeah, so
Harry, just before you answer, Alex, Harry, can you mute wherever that radio is coming from, or TV? Great. Okay. Go ahead,
yeah,
Alex.
That was Maureen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so two great questions. So one, unfortunately, you're not going to find a central place where all these technologies are listed, and that's something that we're trying to work on with our various partners on how to put together a more centralized database that's easily searchable, gives people's opinions and things like that. Just like you would find for, if you want to buy a new car, you can go online and see the reviews. So we're working on something like that. In terms of the reminiscence therapy, if you just kind of search for reminiscence therapy, you're going to find various guides on the internet. There are also trained reminiscence therapists out there. So let's say therapy.
Yeah, and just if I can interject while you're looking, there are trauma-informed therapists as well who use reminiscence therapy with older people who have dementia. So if you look under the trauma-informed literature, you might find something there too, trauma-informed reminiscence therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. They use it a lot with veterans, for example, with PTSD, et cetera. So, but you would be able to find therapists out there as well who this is their profession and this is what they do.
Thank you.
Okay, Joyce, go ahead.
So I just have, I'm a little bit cynical because we see how lots of times when there are things available that can replace the personal care aspect, that it's then expected. And we know that seniors suffer from isolation and they do need that personal touch, how do we prevent systems like the health system, for example, and saying, well, you should have this installed so you don't need this. How can we prevent that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joyce, and one that I struggle with all the time when we go through one of these projects. Um, a lot of it is, again, going back to that point in the project that I present around trying to understand who would benefit from this type of technology. And, this project is just starting off. And so some other variables we may want to be looking at in the model is just that, is this person at risk of social isolation if the technology is provided to them? And again, that may be based on interviews and questions asked of family members and their care circle, et cetera. So, it's just trying to understand who's going to benefit, and also realizing that, again, not everyone is going to benefit from technology. But so, it's kind of a hard question to answer because it really comes down to the person's, social circumstances as well. But, the ideal scenario is a story I like to tell from a gentleman I met a few years ago who told me, oh, I just installed one of those medication management devices in my mom's home, and it was fantastic. I get an alert every day letting me know that she's taking her meds or not. And I said, oh, well, that's fantastic. And I said, so how does that change your interaction with her? And his answer was, well, I still call her every morning like I used to. But now, instead of me asking the very first question of, have you taken your medication, Mom? I ask her how she's doing. She's now become my mom again, not my patient. Now, if every outcome was like that, I'd be happiest person in this field. I know that's not going to be the situation, but again, it's something that we have to take great care about when we develop these technologies, and more importantly, when we select them and implement them.
Yeah, it's a good point. And of course, people have the option of not using them if they prefer the person-to-person care. And all of us are pretty good advocates. We can push back and
Exactly.
let people
Exactly.
know we do not consent to that. We want a real person, so we can still do that.
Yeah.
Natalie, you had a comment, and I wondered if you could just make your comment to the group because it was a good one.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering if when you're testing some of these applications, whether you would be considering more of a rural environment where families may not be as available, but there could be community paramedics going into the home, etc. So whether some of these applications might link with them or with home care if there isn't a family member available. I just loved your presentation. I'm really looking at trying to reduce ALC in the Muskokan area, Ontario Health Team. And I'm working there with a team of people that are looking at trying to get to people in a preventative fashion as opposed to trying to work with them when they're already being deemed ALC. So loved what's happening here, but would love to see you just testing some of this in other environments as well.
Yeah,
and thank
absolutely.
you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. Thanks for those comments. So we actually do look at other environments. I put a link in the chat to one of our innovation centers called CTAN. This is based out of Prince George, British Columbia, and essentially they look at northern communities and whether this type of technology can play a role there. And so not just northern communities, but Indigenous communities we're working very closely with, particularly on education. And so getting into the rural areas is a great important stage into the work that we're doing.
Yeah, it sure is. Harry, you've raised your hand.
Yeah,
I guess we let the IT guy ask a question.
I'm assuming that most info will be stored in cloud, and I see a real big benefit, especially in long-term care facilities. We've been at this for decades, running into time and time again abusive situations in long-term care facilities. Families have gone as far as install cameras or hidden cameras and teddy bears and alarm clocks. Mightn't this help in that area as a preventive measure? As AI could pick up if someone has fallen. At this point, perhaps they wouldn't be able to pick up if they were pushed. or hit or something like that. And we know that that goes on because there have been court cases,
Yeah,
criminal
absolutely.
cases. So I see a real benefit to this technology, especially, initially I was a little bit concerned that it might be a way for long-term care facilities to get out of having as much staff. Now I'm kind of thinking it may be a benefit to the people living in long-term care facilities and their families.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So Harry, that's great. And again, by the way, thank you for doing the IT and changing the slides for me.
Sorry about the sound.
No, that's fine. So yes, the technology can be used for that, elder abuse situation, physical abuse. So in fact, there's researchers here at University of Toronto who actually developed several versions of the technology that can automatically detect and alert nursing staff to resident-on-resident violence, which we see often as well. So the technology is there. I don't think, as far as I know, I have not seen that type of technology applied to non-resident on resident violence. Let's just put it that way. And I'm guessing that's for a whole host of issues. But again, the technology does exist that can detect punching, kicking, and things like that, pushing. We even are able to detect people in their manual wheelchairs trying to run into someone. So that does exist, absolutely. In terms of the second part, yeah, the goal of this is to help the caregiver staff to be more efficient in their jobs, not to be so overworked, and to also be safe as well. And one example is, one of the earlier technologies we developed was around prompting through self-care activities in long-term care homes. So prompting an old adult with dementia to brush their teeth and to wash their hands and that kind of stuff, like step by step. And the examples we saw is that if you added up over like the course of a day of the amount of time one of the care staff was sitting in there in the washroom giving them prompts, it came out to be like 2 or 3 hours out of a day was just spent prompting a person. Whereas the technology could do that while then the staff is doing something else, perhaps, getting the room ready, perhaps taking a short 5-minute break while the technology took over. So again, the technology is also there to provide those efficiencies, not to replace the staff, but again, to make them more efficient in what they're doing, right?
Yeah. Okay, do we have other questions? Before we wind things up, this is your last chance. You can just unmute and shout a question if you like.
And you can always email me after the fact. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah, that's right. If you think of something. Okay. All right. Well, judging by the comments, Alex, I think this was a real success. People really have been saying how interesting and exciting this is. And, for many of us, we haven't known about these kinds of developments. So I really, I think Maureen, Maureen's giving us a thumbs up. Okay. Yeah, so I think for all of those of us who have not known about any of this, this is tremendously helpful. And I'm sure people are giving this a lot of thought now. And we look forward to some of the small startups, some of them, I guess, started by your students, letting us know as well when some things become available, because we can let our membership know as well that those things are now available and where they can get them. So anyway, we can help you. And please don't forget to harass your MPs and MPPs, those of you who want to see better policies around this and the adoption of this. Please do that. Okay, so thank you, Alex.
Thank you, everyone.
That was a wonderful presentation. And thanks everybody for coming, and wish you all a good evening.